rock show, but Aaron coming back is a massive fan of ska music and author and musician himself. Thanks for stopping in.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm excited because I don't meet and talk to people that like ska a lot. And I was a ska groupie first. That was my first was Suburban Legends at Disneyland. So like 14 to 17, I was traveling around. I was all about ska. So tell me like how you got into ska music.
Did you grow up in Southern California?
No. So my mom had a place in Orange County. I grew up in Sacramento.
Oh,
And so I was spoiled. We would go down once a month to Disneyland and then they would come play up in San Francisco and Danville a lot. So I was dating Aaron, the trumpet player of Suburban Legends. And that's who
uh,
introduced me to ska music. And I was like, he's so hot. I like ska music. But that's
yeah,
how
yeah.
I
For
got involved.
yeah, for people that don't know, Suburban Legends, there is a period of like, I don't know, I want to say 3 or 4 years where they were playing downtown Disneyland
Yes.
like constantly.
They were playing the stage every night, the Tomorrowland stage. That's how I met
Yeah,
them. I
yeah.
shouldn't have said my age, but, back in the 90s, I looked older. I met them because they were playing nightly at the Tomorrowland stage, and I got to come up on stage and dance and stuff. But wait, did you start liking ska music because you were a groupie too?
I was I got into ska music in the early 90s.
Yeah.
I was really into just like so first when I was coming up as a kid, I started listening to alternative radio. So this was actually a little before Nirvana broke. So alternative radio and rock radio were kind of separate at that point. And I was listening to Live 105 from San Francisco station. I grew up down in Gilroy, and I really loved just like hearing all this music and these bands I'd never heard of at all, and I was really fascinated by it. And then I got a little older, and I got really interested with that there was this whole network of bands that played in clubs that you didn't know about if you didn't go to these shows, right? I mean, I like, Primus and, like kind of before they broke and just there was a lot of like funk metal and stuff that was really popular. But then someone told me about a band called Skank and Pickle that I needed to check out. And they were kind of, I guess, they kind of were considered in a similar realm because they played a lot of styles, but they were primarily a ska band. And so I went with no awareness of what it was. And then it just blew my mind. And I learned that this was ska, and I became immediately converted. And I went all in on the music.
Yeah. Why do you think it's kind of an underrated genre?
I think it's underrated this is like more this is a US phenomenon, I think, more than other countries, but I think it got popular, and then I think it got kind of misunderstood a little bit, and I think people see it more as for its superficial elements, like it's fun, it's got horns, maybe it's a little goofy. I think like a lot of people don't go any deeper than that, and they sort of see it as like a timepiece of the 90s. But like ska is like, ska music dates back to Jamaica in the 60s. There's been scenes of ska all from, the late 70s to the present. It has it's gone into different subcultures. It's gone all over the world. I mean, there's a large ska subculture in East LA with like Latino kids and stuff that's musically not a huge departure from like the ska you might recognize from 90s, but the subculture is different. The politics are different. Like what the music means to everyone there is something different. And I think there's a lot of that with ska. And I think for some reason, just a lot of culture is unaware of there being this kind of diversity in ska, and this sort of that ska is more than just like, I don't know. I love Real Big Fish. I love all those bands, but a lot of people don't think it's more than Real Big Fish or Save Ferris. Like they just think that's what ska is. And I think that, even with those bands, I don't think they see how like, yeah, Real Big Fish were kind of goofballs, but they also like most of their songs were about being depressed and angry. Like
Hmm.
they weren't like songs about eating sandwiches, but for some reason, that's kind of how people think of ska.
Ska can have a happy, upbeat
Hmm.
vibe, but the lyrics can be darker. And so I like that I could dance and like kind of kick and have fun to it, but it could be darker than while
Hmm.
you're moving around. So you're like the representative. You wrote the first book in Defense
Hmm.
of Ska. Your second book comes out October 29th. What made you want to write a whole, there we go. I love it. What
Yeah.
makes you want to write a whole book defending ska music?
Well, my background is aside from being a ska fan, uh, I've been a music journalist since about 2009. And
Nice.
so I love music. I love all music. I also love being a nerd about music and just going
Me
deep
too.
into music. Yeah. Um, so like the longer I was a music journalist, the more I realized that the first style of music that completely spoke to me, which was ska music, was sort of lacking in the realm of everybody, music journalists like doing like deep dives, people really nerding out on the like specific details and like telling long form stories of the people that were part of it. Like it felt really glossed over. And I
Yeah.
feel like the reason it was glossed over is because people didn't largely think it was deserving of it. And
Mm.
particularly from the music journalist community. Like it's just not cool. Like it's not cool. It's not important. There's nothing of significant that's attached to it. It's kind of the attitude. And I know differently. I know that it was an awesome scene, and there was a lot of important stuff that happened around it. It's connected to a lot of other scenes, and there's a lot of politics involved with it. So I just kind of got more and more interested in like telling the story. And the more I was kind of assessing, like, how can I tell the story of ska, particularly like the ska scene I grew up in the '90s? How do I tell it? And I realized that I had to sort of address the fact that it wasn't taken seriously, which is why I called the book "In Defense of Ska" rather than just like "I love ska." It's
Yeah.
or whatever, you know what I mean? I had to kind of address it. So, I mean, it's not like the whole book's a defense of ska. It's just a kind of it's like a way to get into the story, like talk about its cultural like placement so that we can kind of get into all the stories and all the importance and everything else about it.
You're the defense attorney of ska.
I'm
You're representing
the
you're in court.
With my evidence.
Yeah. No, you know what's interesting is people tease me when I was doing radio a long time ago at 96.7 for playing divorced dad rock. That wasn't a term then. They're like, "Oh, we don't like Nickelback and Drowning Pool and Crossfade." And now that's just resurged and it's become
Mhm.
popular and cool with the younger kids. So I love how I'm like, "Damn it, like my music taste is cool now, but I'm really old. It's fine." Um,
I've
I
never
wanna
I've ne
Oh, yeah.
I've never gotten into Nickelback, but I've never gotten on the train of, like, just making fun of it. But I think the funny thing is that when culture makes some fun of something like Nickelback, it, like, kinda blinds you to see how, like, well, Nickelback is, like, has a massive fan base. And so
Yeah.
you almost, like, you just get so convinced that this is horrible music and you make fun of it that you, like, go, like, "Oh, wait a minute. Like, there's a lot of people that love this, and this is very meaningful to a lot of people." Like, I'm totally missing out on even understanding anything about it, let alone enjoying this music.
And I'm not saying I like to listen to it Sunday morning with my coffee. I mean, when I go to the strip club. When I go to the strip club, I wanna hear some damn Nickelback. I want that girl on the pole dancing to that. I don't wanna hear something John Mayer, you know? Like, it's so my vibes are more that. Okay, and then I wanna know, you're a music journalist. You
Mhm,
said you write for the newspaper in Santa Cruz, Good Times. I mean,
mhm.
how long where did you go to college? When did you start kind of
Hmm.
writing as well for music?
I actually went to college for music for, film and TV, oddly enough, and, I went to San Jose State. Like I said, I grew up in Gilroy. I lived in San Jose most of my adult life. I came to Sacramento around, 11 years ago, but,
But you're in SAC now.
I'm in SAC now, yeah. I've been in SAC now, and we'll get to more of the journalist stuff, but I did write for the
Yeah.
News and Review for a good chunk of years. Um, but, so I kind of had a thought in my mind I was gonna be more in music and film, but after I got out of college, I did some projects. I did a documentary. It was a music documentary. I don't know, just something about it didn't quite fit. You never know when you go to college, like you have an idea about yourself to do a thing, and then you start like dabbling in the actual work and it doesn't quite work with you. But
Yeah.
the music documentary, it kind of led to me writing for the newspaper in San Jose, Metro newspaper. And I was like, I love this. I love doing journalism. And I specifically love doing art, music journalism. I did some art stuff, food, culture. I wasn't doing like political news stuff that didn't really like gel with me, but I loved writing about arts, and my musical database in particular is like super high because I'm a music nerd, and I read about music and I go to shows all the time. I just, when you have an obsession, it's good to have an outlet for it, like a productive
Same.
outlet.
Yeah. No,
Rather
I'm
than
obsessed.
it's just information. Yeah.
I think I'm autistic because like I'm not smart at everything, but musically, I know a lot of strange facts. If I went on Jeopardy for like metal and rock music, I can tell you what album, what year, and how the
Mhm.
band switched hired guns. And then it's just like that's just what I like. That's my
Yeah.
thing, and live music in general. So you went from writing into music, and then when did you start playing music?
Oh, so what playing music was more something I did when I was younger. So when I
Okay.
was in high school, I started playing in a band. I started playing ska. So I actually had a band before I discovered ska. And then when I discovered ska, I was like, okay, band, this is the music I want us to play now. And it took a little bit of time, but eventually I moved us over to being a ska band. And so my band was called Flat Planet. We were a Gilroy-based ska band. We played in the Bay a lot. Then we toured like 3 times. I booked like some DIY touring for us. It was a ton of fun. One of the best times of my life because there's nothing better than like playing in basements and backyards in like other states and then having like 30, 40
Yeah.
people there and then staying in people's houses. Also, there's nothing better in the context of you being like 20 of doing this, not now, but
No, my back can't stay on people's
yeah.
like garage floors and couches anymore. I used to couch surf, and when I wanted to go to a show that was like, say, in Arkansas, I'm like, oh, I'll just blow up a mattress. Now I'm like, do I have a hotel? Do I have reservation? What's
Mhm.
going on? I'm like, I can't do that. Wait, so are you a flat earther or what's with
No,
the
no.
name?
So yeah,
Okay.
that's what's funny about it. Cause so think about like mid 90s was like there wasn't really a flat earth movement I was aware
No.
of.
Yeah.
So it was a funny name because it was like there's no way anyone would think that we were seriously about flat earth, right? So it was kind of a cool sounding name, Flat Planet. But now I would never name a band that now because then people would seriously think or have to question us like, do you actually think the earth is flat?
I went
Like,
on a first date and he was so hot, and he told me he's a flat earther, and he's in a group that he meets with, and I'm like, "I can't take you home. There just goes my erection left. I just can't do it."
yeah,
So, I
yeah,
mean, I'm all down to hear everybody's train of thought and where they think, but it just to me, that's just science. It's not a reality, but it's cute.
yeah,
And then wait, Robert Hawk. My
yeah.
buddy, my fellow DJ buddy, and you guys have gone to shows together?
Yeah, he when he lived in Sacramento, because he's in where's he at now?
He's like North
Montana?
Dakota or something? No, he's like
Dakota.
out in the
Yes,
middle
he's
of
a
nowhere. Yeah,
okay. He's pursuing his radio dreams. He got a gig out there. But
I
before he
know.
moved, he would be at every single ska show without
Oh,
fail. And his wife would usually be with him, and he would often even bring his baby with some
aw,
gigantic headphones to protect their eardrums. But yeah, and he he
that's
he
cute.
was a super hardcore supporter of ska and punk rock and stuff.
So we're hardcore Weird Al fans. That's how we've bonded. We're just
Oh,
massively into Weird Al, and so
me too.
yeah, I'm like I backup danced for him. I mean, I just had his drummer by. We did a 14 album review walkthrough for an hour and a half. That was probably like my dream on the new podcast. But Robert was like mentioned you, and he's like, what's interesting? I will say a lot of people that like Weird Al like ska.
Mhm.
There's a correlation, or you just have good taste. I don't know
Yeah, maybe.
what that is. So wait, what instrument did you play
I
in
was
your
a
band?
drummer. I was a drummer.
Okay. Okay.
I
Did
I've
you
done
ever
I've done
pick up anything
some.
brass?
No, I tried to play guitar and I was never good at it, and I played a little bit of keyboards, I was okay at it, but drums was the instrument that I felt like I was natural at, and I think with some people when it comes to musicians, like drummers, like some people are just natural drummers and then they kind of suck at every other instrument. And then there's like people that are like, I can play bass, I can play guitar, I can play this other keyboards. And
Like
then
Dave Grohl?
yeah, and then you put them on drums and I don't know, they're not as good at drums. I don't know, because it's just like rhythm versus melodic, I guess.
Oh,
Like
okay. I
like
don't
I
even say
think
good at everything.
well, I guess there are people that are good at everything, but as much as I like music, I just don't think melodically, but I do think rhythmically. So I think that's why drumming has always been sort of natural to me, and other instruments have not.
Yeah.
So I
I'm
mean
really
that's
good at drums on Rock Band, but real
mhm.
drummers said that it's not accurate and they can't play it on the video game. So I'm really good at video game rock star shit.
Hey, but yeah, Weird Al. My all time favorite show I ever saw was Weird Al. This is back when I lived in San Jose. It was at the Mountain Winery, which is a very classy venue if you live in the
I've
South
been
Bay
there.
area. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It was what a place to see Weird Al, and this would have been like, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. So it wasn't like Weird Al in the 90s. This is Weird Al. Actually, Weird Al had like, he was big in the 80s and 90s, and then he kind of took a dip in culture, and he was playing like state fairs and stuff like that. And then he kind of had, I don't know, at some point, everyone realized that he was a genius, and he kind of came back and he was playing nice venues. And
Yeah, I got made fun of when I liked him because I was backup dancing in '99, and he kind of was at that lull, where my friends
yeah.
were just like, "What?" Like, they liked NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. It wasn't cool to like Weird Al, and I had his
Mm.
posters up in my room, and I was like he had All About the Pentiums just came out, and I was like, "God, I wanna date him so bad." And I mean, nobody had a crush on Weird Al. And then now he's really cool and really popular in the movie, and he's got the new tour in 2025, Bigger and Weirder. I gotta go back
Yeah.
out to see him, so I'm kind of excited too that he's gonna do more. He went through the phase where it was like he wasn't changing all the time, and he kind of did the instrumental, version, which was neat to have something different, but I love him going back to how I grew up and how I saw him with doing all the big hits and the
Yeah.
costumes, and my kids love him now too, which is really cool that he's a kid-friendly artist that you could take the whole
Yeah.
family to see him. But
I
yeah.
think I think with him now, especially in his like in this era where he's kind of getting recognized again, I think he's like just one of the best performers. Like he just understands like what a good show is, and he creates that. He plays like the hits, like you say. He's got video. He's got the costume changes. It goes by so perfectly and so smoothly. You
Yeah,
watch like a 2-3 hour Weird Al set, and you're not like looking at your phone. You're just
100%.
completely engaged. And how many artists are able to do that?
Almost none, and then he has a comedian or someone funny open, and then he has his comedy bits in between when he's changing, so you're
Yeah,
constantly laughing and engaged in the show. You're never, yeah, like you
yeah.
said, it kinda goes by fast, and you're never, wondering when it's gonna end, or I don't even videotape it. I'll be like, "Oh, I didn't get any video of it because I was
Because
just so into it."
you're enjoying it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, are you still in Sacramento now?
Yes, yes. Still in Sacramento.
How do you feel about Sacramento as, like, a music scene or writing scene or kinda where it's at?
Well, before the pandemic, I felt like we were pretty strong, and I was writing for the News and Review, mostly more in like the mid 2010s. That was kind of the time I was doing a majority of it. I was kind of winding down from News and Review before the pandemic, largely because my book was getting finished and I was getting ready to launch my book, and I needed like less work in order to finish it. I felt like there was especially like back then, like 2015, 16, 17, 18, we were strong. There was bands, rock bands, there was hip hop acts, there was like really interesting stuff that was happening. And I feel like, I haven't put a ton of effort into like seeking out what's happening, but I feel like we lost some venues. There's a lot of artists that have not come back. I don't feel like there's a huge resurgence of new artists. Now, I don't feel like I'm an expert necessarily because, like I said, I'm not out in the streets like looking for it, but it doesn't feel as strong as it was to me prior to the pandemic. And I know some cities have suffered from that. Some cities have really bounced back. So I'm not sure if you have the same take or not.
Yeah, no, I similar, and I think everything everywhere got hit, hard by the pandemic, and I do feel like this year was the first year festivals and whatnot have come back fully. Like, it felt
Mhm.
like 2019 in 2024, if that makes sense, on a lot of
Yeah. Yeah.
festivals and things. I'm bummed Holy Diver closed. I thought someone else would buy it and reopen it. I'd like more bands visiting Sac, but I will say from growing up in Sacramento, I made fun of it as the cow town. I couldn't wait to relocate to LA. Um, and now I appreciate it, and it's obviously just doing so much better than 30 years ago. It's on the map. We have Aftershock and Golden Sky just came here. They're talking about possibly adding a third festival now. It is growing. I think it's on the up and coming,
Well,
and
I
it
hope
give it,
that's the case. Yeah.
I do too, but give it a couple more years, and I think I like it better than LA. I'll be honest. I visited LA again, and LA took the biggest hit with COVID. It's
Mhm.
just a kind of a ghost town. There's just not everyone moved to Vegas and Nashville
Mm.
to play just to pay their bills because they couldn't perform in LA. And so I just feel like I went back down there and I was like, after being there for 7 years, what happened? Like, where is it? I think SAC is actually more poppin' than LA, which I didn't think I'd ever say.
Yeah, as a person who spent like a majority of their adult life in San Jose, now San Jose is like one of the biggest cities in the US, right? But San Jose has always struggled as an art city because it's like there's Santa Cruz is like only like a half hour away, and Santa Cruz is a vibrant college town with tons of stuff to do, right? And
Yeah.
then like an hour away, you can go to San Francisco or Oakland, which is like major touring hubs, right? Sacramento is kind of cool because it's far enough away from the Bay Area that it's considered to be a separate market. And
Yeah.
so you can get people that play like we're going to hit San Francisco as our A market, but we need maybe Santa Cruz and Sacramento. Like so that happens a lot, and I think we get a lot of touring acts because of our that we're just far enough away from the Bay Area that we're
The
not
geographic
considered.
location.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're,
That's
like, on the way to Portland, so they're like, "Well, we need a hotel and sleep in Sac. We might
yeah,
as well play a show to pay for gas." And then so we'll
exactly.
get
Yeah.
some, like I've seen some really good bands at Ace of Spades that normally play large venues,
Yep.
that they
Yeah.
just do. They're like, "Oh, we'll do a Sac show on a Tuesday night." And I'm like, "I'm only paying $20 to see Everclear right now, like, this is cool." So, I like it, like, I've been here now 8 years almost, and I'm a huge fan of SAC, and it's funny how we always go back home usually, like, how that
Mhm.
happens. I'm like, "No, I'm never gonna go back home. I'm gonna."
Yeah,
And then we miss home, and it's like, yeah, and it's affordable. Like, it's
it
way
is.
more affordable than the Bay Area and, Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, the affordability is partly what led to me living here, being a Bay Area person. Um, but I in terms of why I chose SAC over any other place in the world that was affordable, being a Bay Area person, it was because I had friends here. I'd already started freelancing for the news and review. I was writing just, phone interviews with bands. So I kind of already had some indication that Sacramento was a cool place and that I wouldn't be moving there as a complete stranger. So I was like, I think Sacramento would be cool to move to. Um,
Yeah,
and I think I was right.
I think you are. So do you think you can be in a ska band and your odds of getting laid are pretty high? Or is
Yes.
it like, no?
Sure. Well, I mean, here's the thing. There's fans. Everything's got fans, right?
Mhm.
So just fan the ska fans.
Yeah. What
There
when
you
you were in a band, were the chicks on you guys?
I was very quiet and
Yeah?
shy, but I did actually meet my wife back when I was ska band. And we're still together.
See?
So yeah, I guess
Okay.
so. There you go.
Then it worked.
It worked. Yeah.
I only date musicians. I don't know. I tried to not, and I'm like, I'm so bored. Like, play an instrument, and I don't know.
But
I
I will say this from a lot of bands I've interviewed in my book, especially bands that came up in the 80s and 90s. A lot of them would say like, yeah, I didn't want to be in a punk or hardcore band because it was so aggressive and the guys were trying to fight. But being in a ska band, everyone's having a good time and there's a lot of cute girls dancing.
Yeah.
So we'll just leave it at that.
Nobody's trying to pee on you when you go see a ska show. It's
Yeah.
not as punk rock as
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, Gore's," like, oh my god, my friend just went to Gore the other night and just covered in blood, and then she took a shower and she can't get the blood off still, like, she's lightly stained from the Gore show, so I haven't
Mhm.
done one of those in forever. Okay, so you have a SAC book event at Time Tested Books, October 24th. So you're gonna be autographing
Mhm.
your book?
I'm going to be autographing. We'll be selling
Okay.
the books. The book's actually released on the 29th, but you can get the book a few days early at Time Tested at this event on Thursday on October 24th. I'll also read a little bit. And then my friend Keith Lowell Jensen, who's a pretty well-known comedian here in Sacramento, he's going to be hosting. We'll do like a little conversation. We'll do a Q&A with the audience. It'll be a lot of fun. The Q&A is always fun because I just know way too much about ska, and I can usually
Yeah.
answer anyone's ska questions, and lay them on me, and I'll probably know the answer to it. Is kind of how it usually goes.
What's like a great ska band that I should check out that I might not have heard of?
Well, if you want to listen to like a new band, I would say check out a band called Catbite from Philadelphia.
Cat
They
Lab.
are, yeah, they're a great kind of power pop meets ska. No horns, organ driven, really, really poppy and catchy.
I feel
Female
like there's
singer,
so many
yeah.
bands from Philly, like, on the map or, like, just
Yeah, Philly's
Pennsylvania in general.
I I feel like there's a lot of cool bands coming out of Philly lately, like a lot of the cool punk and hardcore bands are coming out of Philly, like Soul Glow is a
Yeah.
good example, yeah.
I don't know, there's something in the water. The Amish are just spreading their good vibes everywhere to come out. Well, thank you, Aaron, so much for stopping by Stuff's Rock Show podcast, and I look forward to reading your book.
Alrighty, thanks for having me.